Hello scholars, this is Mrs. DiBiase. This will be our last video review for fiction before the SOL. Today, we are focusing on our main character and her feelings and motivations. We will also touch upon setting and figurative language. Our short story is titled Sahar and the Tiger Cub. It is by Michael Northrop, and the art is by Mark Elliott. In order to truly understand a short story, we always have to think about how our main character is feeling and what his or her motivations are. Let's start reading to learn more about our main character, Sahar. Sahar glanced out at the Red Sea. It wasn't really red at all. Even in the early morning light, it was already a pleasing blue. She unwrapped her long canary yellow robe and quickly stripped down to her bathing suit. It was a big boxy one-piece with a color like the sand. She'd gotten it for her 12th birthday a few months earlier, and it was by far her most prized possession, because more than anything else, Sahar liked to swim. She loved the feeling of churning through the water under her own power, her smooth strokes almost as fluid as the sea itself. More than that, her daily swims were just about the only time she had to herself. Life in her small village was a busy bustle of endless chores, and it would all begin again very soon. I have learned that Sahar enjoys her time in the sea. With that in mind, let's answer our first question. Question 1. Which character trait best describes Sahar when she is in the sea? A. Natural. B. Timid. C. Awkward. D. Fearful. Feel free to pause the video while you make the best selection. We always need to be able to support our character inferences with evidence from the text. I selected that Sahar feels natural when she is in the sea. Let's choose the evidence that helped us make that inference about Sahar by answering our next question. Question 2. Which line from the story supports your answer to question 1? A. Sahar glanced out at the Red Sea. B. It was a big boxy one-piece with a color like the sand. C. She loved the feeling of the churning through the water under her own power, her smooth strokes almost as fluid as the sea itself. D. More than that, her daily swims were just about the only time she had to herself. Which quote from the text makes you feel that Sahar feels natural in the sea? Feel free to pause the video to select the best answer. Let's continue with the story. Sahar lumped her clothing into a ball and hid it on the shady side of the lone palm tree on the barren beach. She stood up tall and let the sun warm her dark brown skin and the breeze blow through her messy hair. Then she turned and began walking toward the water. She kicked up a spray of sand and thought about the day ahead. She would help her mother, Pani, make breakfast, and then help her older twin brothers, Yalan and Jafar, with their morning chores. There might be some school after that, if the school was open. It hadn't been the day before. Even if it was, there wouldn't be enough books for everyone, and she knew by now that she lacked the confidence to fight for one. "No, you have it," she'd say to whomever it was this time. "That's okay." Then she'd hang back and try to read over her classmate's shoulder until she was shooed away. In this part of the text, we continue to learn about Sahar's character traits. While Sahar feels natural in the sea, school is another story. Let's take a look at our next question. It asks us about how Sahar feels at school. Question 3. In contrast to how Sahar feels in the sea, At school, which character trait best describes Sahar? A. Natural. B. Timid. C. Excited. D. Fearful. Feel free to pause the video to make the best selection. Of course, we need to support our character inference with evidence from the text. I selected that Sahar feels timid at school. Timid means shy or lacking in confidence. Let's look at the next question to select the best evidence that supports that Sahar is timid at school. Question 4. Which lines from the story support your answer to question 3? Let's pause for a moment and notice this word lines. The word lines is letting me know that I am more than likely supposed to select more than one answer. So let's read that question one more time. Question 4. Which lines from the story support your answer to question 3? A. There might be some school after that, if the school was open. It hadn't been the other day. C. Even if it was, there wouldn't be enough books for everyone, and she knew by now that she lacked the confidence to fight for one. D. Then she'd hang back and try to read over her classmate's shoulder until she was shooed away. Remember, you're looking for the answers that support that Sahar feels timid at school. Feel free to pause the video to select the best answers. Let's continue with our story. Sahar reached the water and dipped her toes into the little waves of the inland sea. Warm as always, she waded out deeper. Why couldn't she be more confident? It bothered her. How many times had she seen her brothers climb up the date palm trees, barefoot and with knives between their teeth like pirates, to harvest the dates? How were they even related to her? They didn't understand it either. You are one of us, they'd say. Be strong, be brave, like us. But it was easy for them. Even in her earliest memories, they'd been fearless acrobats, climbing everything in sight. The only time she felt in her element was here, wading deeper into the Red Sea. And even that had its limits. Almost despite herself, she lifted her eyes and looked at the water farther out. She saw the swirls and dimples on the surface, out where the shallow sea floor fell away to the deep blue depths, out where the currents were strongest. Even though she was standing in warm water under a hot sun, she shivered. Question 5. At this moment, why does Sahar shiver? Is it A, the water is too cold? B, she is scared of going to school? C, she is frightened of the strong current? D, the sun is too warm. Feel free to pause the video to make the best selection. The Red Sea was known for strong winds and unpredictable local currents. She'd read that once and laughed. The currents here weren't unpredictable. They were predictably bad. Her father, Jocko, was off seeking work on the docks, but before he'd left, he'd warned her, "You should never swim out past the shallows." "Never ever," she said. He didn't need to convince her. The strong currents and deep water scared her. She doubted she'd ever be able to swim out that far, at least not if she intended to come back. The water was up past her belly now. Time to dive in. She bent her knees, raised her arms above her head, and took a deep breath. But as she leaned forward, she saw something. A flash of color that should not have been there. Orange. She let the breath leak out of her puffed-up cheeks and straightened up. "What on earth?" she whispered to herself. She squinted into the distance. The water swirled and the sun glittered. and for a moment she lost sight of it. And then there it was. She couldn't believe her eyes. She stepped closer and squinted harder. But it was still there. A small animal. Its wet fur orange and black. Impossible, she thought. At this point in the text, I am checking to make sure that you are really paying attention. Are you really paying attention? If you are, please raise your hand and say to your teacher, "Nothing is impossible." Please pause the video and give this very important message to your teacher. But a moment later, the little creature raised its head up higher, struggling to get a breath of air. In that moment, in the clear light of morning, she knew it was a tiger cub. But how? Tigers had never lived anywhere near the Red Sea. It could have escaped from a zoo, she thought. Maybe it came from one of the luxury resorts that dotted the coastline like diamonds in the dust. She had never met a rich person before, but she knew from the village's one television that they were very strange and owned many rare things. We are learning more about Sahar and her family. I have learned that she is not wealthy. In fact, her village only has one TV. The entire village only has one TV. She has never even met a rich person. This part of the text helps me to get a better understanding of where Sahar lives and what her life might be like. Let's take a look at our next question. Question 7. The setting is the where and when the story takes place. Which of the following best describes where Sahar lives? Is it A, a small village by the Red Sea, B, a city by the Red Sea, C, a village on the coast of a lake, D, a small town in Florida? The previous section of text has figurative language. Question 6. Which line contains figurative language? A, but a moment later the little creature raised its head up higher, struggling to get a breath of air. B, in that moment, in the clear light of morning, she knew it was a tiger cub. C, it could have escaped from the zoo, she thought. D, maybe it came from one of the luxury resorts that dotted the coastline like diamonds in the dust. Circle the answer that contains figurative language, and next to your answer, please write down the type of figurative language you think it is. Is it A, metaphor, a simile, or hyperbole? Let's finish this story and find out what happens to Sahar and the tiger cub. Sahar knew something else too. The tiger cub was drowning. Wet and miserable, it could barely keep its head above the water. It was out there where the currents were strongest. Though she'd been warned never to swim out that far, she bent her knees once more and leaned forward. She had to try to save it. She hesitated for one precious moment more and then dove in. Sahar kicked hard under the water and began swinging her arms as soon as she surfaced. She headed straight for the spot where she'd seen the tiger cub. At first, the water soothed her, like slipping into a warm bath. But as her limbs continued to churn, the blue waters could offer no more comfort. Swimming fast was hard work, and she grew tired quickly. Fatigue became pain, but still she pushed on. She raised her head to try to locate the little cub. She was sure she was close by now, but when she saw the flash of orange, it still seemed so far off. Could she make it? Her doubts clawed at her, but she had to keep going. The cub was struggling to stay afloat. Sahar forced herself onward, kicking her leaden legs and swinging her aching arms. Finally, she risked another look, and there it was, barely 10 feet away. Only its black nose and scared, wide-open eyes were above the water now. But as she watched, the glittering surface of the sea swirled again, and the little cub disappeared, pulled under by the wicked current. "No!" Sahar sputtered. Adrenaline surged through her, and she swung her arms forward. She swam harder than she ever had before. She would not abandon this cub. In just a few strokes, she reached the spot where it had been. Nothing. She took a deep breath and dove down, lifting her legs up high behind her and sliding down into the deep blue. She looked all around, letting the salt water sting her eyes. But the water was darker here, and she saw nothing. No, wait! There! A flash of deep orange. She kicked. She reached. She had it! She grabbed its soft fur and squirming body with both hands. She turned and looked up. The sun was blazing on the surface, and she kicked hard for it. The tiger cub was heavier than she thought. Her lungs screamed at her, demanding she take a deadly, watery breath. She kicked wildly instead. The cub had stopped struggling now and was limp in her hands. She thrust it up toward the sun. They broke the surface together. Sun and air and life. Sahar turned toward the shore. It seemed so far. Desperate to keep the little cub out of the water, Sahar flopped over onto her back. Then, with the little animal cradled against her chest, she began to kick. The strong currents grabbed at her legs, trying to pull her back, trying to pull her down. She kicked harder, and slowly the sun above her began to shift. She was moving. And then, when she was sure she could go no farther, she heard a pair of familiar voices. "Be strong," they called. "Be brave like us." Her brothers! She kicked again. Their voices were so strong that she was sure they were right behind her, cheering her on. It gave her strength to keep going. Suddenly, her back hit the sand. She had reached the beach. She just lay there gulping air and letting the little waves wash against her. She turned her head to look behind her, but her brothers were nowhere in sight. It was only the memory of them that had saved her. She was alone. Well, not quite. The tiger cub squirmed in her arms and spat up seawater in a series of little baby coughs. It was alive. She had no doubt about it. She felt its little heart beating against her own. "I would never let you drown," she whispered. "Never ever." So, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like Sahar and the cub made it out of the Red Sea in one piece and alive. Let's go ahead and answer the remainder of our questions. Question 8. Are Sahar's brothers really there? Were they really there on the beach? The text states that Sahar hears the brothers' voices. Are they really calling to her, or is it just the memory of her courageous brothers that are echoing in her head? Go ahead and answer question 8. Are Sahar's brothers really there? A, yes, or B, no. Remember, we are trying our best to understand our main character's feelings and motivations. Let's look at question 9. Question 9. Why is Sahar determined to save the tiger? A. She wants to prove that she is as brave as her brothers. B. If she returns the tiger to its owner, she might receive reward money. C. She is a caring and kind-hearted person who does not want the tiger to suffer. D. She has always wanted a new exotic pet. For this question, I can eliminate 2 bad answers pretty easily. The story does not mention reward money. It also does not mention Sahar's desire to have a new pet. Now, I have to figure out if she is more motivated by proving herself to her brothers, or is she motivated by her own goodness? When she makes the decision to swim further out to the cub, does she think of her brothers, or is she mostly thinking about the well-being of the cub? Determining the answer to this question will lead you to understanding the character's motivations. Feel free to go back in the video to re-listen to parts of the text to figure out if Sahar cares more about what her brothers think or if Sahar cares more about saving the baby cub. Pause the video to select the best answer. In the previous question, I determined that Sahar, despite her lack of confidence, she is truly brave and kind-hearted. She is motivated by her determination to save the cub. Let's take a look to see which piece of evidence shows that Sahar's caring nature is what truly motivates her. Question 10. Which line from the story supports your answer to question 8? A. She had never met a rich person before, but she knew from the village's one television that they were very strange and owned many rare things. B. The cub was struggling to stay afloat. C. The strong currents grabbed at her legs, trying to pull her back, trying to pull her down. D. I would never let you drown, she whispered. Never, ever. Which line here supports that Sahar is kind-hearted? Feel free to pause the video to make the best selection. And here is our final question. Let's think about how Sahar feels at the end of the story. How would you feel if you just saved a baby tiger? Question 11. After Sahar saves the tiger, the reader can infer that she feels A. Charming, B. Wise, C. Proud, D. Foolish. Select your best answer, and then raise your hand to let your teacher know that you have finished the assignment. Thank you very much for participating in this final fiction SOL review. Have a great day!